Have you ever felt like you're just losing your grip on time? Or maybe you feel caught between wanting to do everything and really just needing to be still. Well, today, we're going to unpack a really powerful sermon that gives a totally fresh perspective on these pressures of modern life. It all kicks off with this line right here. The speaker had moved from the Midwest to Dallas and suddenly realized her internal clock was just broken. I mean, can you imagine losing a sense so fundamental that you didn't even know you were relying on it? That is a seriously disorienting thought. And this really shows you what she meant. Back in the Midwest, time had a rhythm, right? It was marked by sweaters and snow. But in Dallas, well, you might be wearing shorts in December. All those familiar markers were just gone. And without those outside cues, she couldn't tell if something happened 2 months ago or 6. So you see, this was way more than just about the weather. It was a seismic shift. It was this kind of grief for a way of seeing the world that just didn't work anymore. You know that feeling when a core piece of how you understand reality suddenly feels useless? I think a lot of us can relate to a version of that. So what do you do with that kind of disorientation? Well, the sermon suggests that the way forward is to intentionally shift your perspective. And that brings us to our first big idea, finding a whole new framework. The speaker brings up this idea of Advent. Now, whatever your background, the key here is to think of this less as a religious countdown and more as a practical tool. It's like a designated time to practice letting go of our old ways of seeing and start trying on a new perspective. And that leads to another really powerful shift. So let me just ask you, how do you really think about light? For a lot of us, especially if you live somewhere like Texas, light can feel harsh, right? It's exposing, it can even be draining. But the sermon just flips this idea completely on its head. Instead of light that makes you feel exposed and vulnerable, what if light was actually a form of protection, a defensive force? It's a total 180. The very thing we might think of as revealing our flaws could actually be the thing that keeps us safe. This is just such a powerful reframe. Light isn't something to hide from, it's something to put on. It's not about being exposed, it's about being protected. That is a fascinating shift in thinking. Okay, so we've shifted our view on time and on light. But so what? How does this actually help us in our day-to-day lives? Well, it helps us navigate this fundamental tension that we all feel, especially during really busy seasons. Which brings us to our next section, living in the tension. I mean, does this look familiar to anybody? On the one hand, you want to go to every party, you want to suck the marrow out of the festive season. But on the other hand, you're craving quiet and solitude and some real, meaningful reflection. We are constantly getting pulled between these two very real, very valid desires. And the sermon gives this tension a name. It calls it the already and not yet. It's this idea that we're basically sandwiched in time. We're living in a world where a promise of hope and peace has been made. That's the already. But you just have to look around to see that not everything is set right. And that's the not yet. And this is not some abstract idea, okay? We feel this tension everywhere. We see it playing out in conflicts across the globe, and we feel it in our own homes when there's strife. You feel it when you have to put on a mask at work, or when you find yourself chasing a life you realize you don't even really want. This quote just nails the feeling perfectly. It's that feeling of being churned up with anxiety because the world we see doesn't quite match up with the promise we hold on to. It's like we're living with this constant, low-level hum of knowing things could be better while also trying to celebrate what's good right now. So if this tension is just part of the deal, if it's unavoidable, what are we supposed to do about it? Well, that brings us to our final section, the call to stay awake. You know, our first instinct is usually to look for the easy way out. We make these hard and fast rules for ourselves. Okay, I'm just going to say no to every invitation, or, you know what, I'm going to every single party. We try to solve the tension by just picking a side. But here's the catch. The sermon argues that those rigid rules, as much as they might feel like a relief, they actually let us fall asleep at the wheel. And why is that? Because they stop us from doing the real work, the hard work, of figuring out what's right in each new moment. They're a way to check out, not to engage. The alternative? Well, it's a lot harder, but it's also way more meaningful. It's a call to stay awake. It's a call to resist that urge for an easy black and white answer. It's about learning how to hold both things at once, the peace and the busyness, the reflection and the celebration. And yeah, that requires our constant attention. And this brings us to the final, really provocative thought from all this. What if the point isn't to fix the tension between the already and the not yet? What if the real spiritual work, the actual art of living, is just to get better at staying awake right inside of it? Now that is something worth thinking about.